everyone, and welcome to today's Open Teams community event. I'm Brian Skin, the Open Source Architect Community Manager here at Open Teams, and I'll be your host for today. Open Teams is your one-stop shop for a range of services ensuring your success with open source, from commercial open source support to open source training, staffing and recruiting services, and more. Visit openteams.com or reach out to us at connect@openteams.com for more info. As part of Open Teams' overall mission to sustain and support open source, we're sponsoring the Open Source Architect community with the goal of providing a dedicated space for experts to connect and collaborate over their favorite open source tech. To learn more or to apply for membership, visit openteams.com/OSA-community. We are also sponsoring the Engineering Manager community on LinkedIn, focused on fostering the career and personal development of engineering leaders. Visit openteams.com/EMC-LinkedIn to check that out. In today's event, I'll be talking to Julian Sequeira and Bob Belderbos, co-founders of PyBites, where they both work to help beginners start their Python development journey and also to help established Pythonistas level up their mastery of the language and of their open source contribution skills. We'll hear more about that in a minute. In particular, Bob and Julian are here today to talk about imposter syndrome, common emotional mental health challenge in the developer sphere in particular, where folks have a hard time believing that their contributions are actually valuable, and sometimes even despite evidence to the contrary. Bob and Julian encounter imposter syndrome on a regular basis in the course of their work with PyBites and have lots to share about what it is, how to recognize it, and how to deal with it. We are open to questions. Please send any you might have into the chat. We'll address as many as we can in the course of the conversation or at the end. We are recording today's event. That video will go up on the Open Teams YouTube channel once we have it prepared. Subscribe there to be notified when it goes up. I will drop a link to that into the chat. All right. Let's get started. Bob, Julian, hello, welcome. I'm glad that we found a time slot that works to have both of you here at the same time. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hey,
Hi,
Brian.
Brian.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
Really
We're thrilled
appreciate it.
to be here. Thank you.
Great. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves and PyBites. Bob, you want to start?
Yes, I can go first. So I'm Bob Belderbos. I am a software developer, entrepreneur. I've worked many years as a software developer, and since 2016, I run PyBites with Julian, and we grew from a tech blog, course provider, content creators, which we still do, into a coaching business where we help, as you said, beginners as well as advanced Pythonistas upskill, becoming better at their Python developer and mindset skills. And that mindset we're going to talk a lot about today. And that's a bit about me. So, Julian?
Cool. Thanks, Bob. And thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. This is a pleasure to be here and an honor as well. So my name's Julian Sequeira, or Sequeira, if you say it properly, as Brian did. So thank you, Brian. And it's something I learned recently, that my surname's Portuguese anyway. So yeah, I'm here. I'm from PyBites. My whole shtick here is that I'm the mindset and career person at PyBites. I lead everything related to our mindset and career tracks in our coaching and our work. It didn't start that way, but as PyBites grew, I've had to work my way into this side of it so that we could continue the focus that we wanted on it. So I have a career in technology starting from when I was 19, so that was starting to be too long ago for me, for my liking. But yeah, starting at Sun Microsystems, Oracle, Amazon, or AWS, I should say. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. Lots of technology, lots of coding, you name it. It's been great, and that's led to a lot of the insights that I bring to PyBites and our mindset and career coaching. So with that done and aside, we are here to talk about imposter syndrome today. So Bob, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about imposter syndrome a little bit. Yeah, first, I think a definition. So what is imposter syndrome and when was it first coined? I actually looked that up today, and the first time the term was spotted was by Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes in their study, The Imposter Phenomenon in High Achieving Women. That was in 1978. But imposter syndrome is something we all feel, and I would say especially in the tech sector, and we go into why that is shortly. But it comes down to a feeling that you're not really belonging, that you kind of faked your way through it and that you're a fraud, which you're not, but that's how you feel, right? And I think we have that all as developers to a certain extent. We have definitely struggled with it. We still struggle with it. We have, of course, learned how to better tackle it, and that's what today is about. But yeah, even very accomplished people, for example, Sebastian Ramirez, who created the Fast API framework, even Guido from Russell, the creator of Python, at some point admitted that imposter syndrome is a real thing. So it's widespread. That can be crippling, and we want to talk about it today.
I mean, to some degree, the fact that such high-profile folks have experienced it is reassuring in a way, in that it is not just you. Everyone wrestles with it to some degree or another.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things that, as you've said, everyone wrestles with it, but everyone at every level, right? So it's not just the pros and the big names out there who tend to have it because they're out there and doing incredible things with the technology and in the communities. It happens to people at work. It happens in all aspects of life, not just coding, but it doesn't matter where you are and what you do, you're going to go through it. And I know the term is thrown around a lot these days, right? But whatever you think of the buzzword that is imposter syndrome now, it's here to stay, and it's something that we're all going to go through, and it's just natural as humans to go through it. So when it comes to development specifically and Python developers, I think it hits us a lot more, and a lot more often, because this is a field that is very precise, right? It values expertise. It values people who can solve critical problems quickly. And so with that sort of pressure, it's something that can affect us very easily. We're like, oh, I can't do that. And a lot of the time it might be because you haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, but you automatically start feeling like it when you think, oh, geez, you hear stories about how systems have gone down and people have just known what to do and can just get to the problem and solve it. And you think, I could never do that, right? Same, and as we're here talking about open source, you think about the projects that are out there that you could contribute to, and you think, oh, geez, it's only the best of the best that contribute to that. Oh, that's made by my hero, or that's those people, they've been doing it for 30 years. Who am I to stand up next to them and even think about contributing or making a pull request, right? So this is one of those fields where you can really feel it a lot more than other places. And now with AI coming in as well, that adds to it as well, right? Because you're thinking, a lot of people will think, well, if I use AI to help, I'm an imposter. AI can help solve problems quicker, but is that okay? Am I a fool for doing that? And so there's a lot of layers to this in the coding scene and the developer scene. And at the end of the day, it comes down to feeling like you're not as skilled as your peers, right? Or the people that you are looking to contribute with.
Yeah, and sorry, Ryan, go.
I was going to say, one of the things, the dynamics that you see in developer world is, being wrong on the internet is you make a slight error and then you get piled upon. It's like, oh, you made a mistake. Is that part? Are there any of the dynamics of that sort that also heighten the tension for developers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
especially if your first foray is on Reddit, then yes.
We've been there. We've been there.
Opinions are my own. Yeah, no, it depends, right? If you find the safe space, and not to blow our own horn, but that's sort of what we've organically created with PyBites, is this safer space so that you can do that without fear of feeling like people are going to judge you and pile on you when you make those mistakes. So yeah, it depends. Yeah, definitely.
So I'm sorry, you were going to say, Bob.
No, I'm this would have been nice to share, but we had an image for this, and I will just describe it. It's a big circle, yellow circle, and it says what I think others know about Python, and that's humongous, right? And then inside that yellow circle, you have a blue circle, which is way smaller, and it says what I know about Python, right? So and that it's really important that this is all in your head, right? Like we tend to think that we don't know that much about Python and that the others would know way more. And that kind of is, I think, I really want to highlight that as a core issue here, right? That we often overestimate what the others think and that they are not struggling with things. As Julian was saying, like, yeah, he's already doing it for 30 years. And then underestimate what we know. But that's all these things we play in our heads, right? And then you gradually find out that that's not the case, right? And they are also struggling. But anyway, that was just as an addition to the previous.
It seems to me that big yellow circle, part of the difficulty there is that there's, and I mean, I've experienced it where you kind of lump what everyone else knows about Python into that yellow circle. And that what it really is a bunch of individual small circles all clustered together. And it feels like what you know is small relative to all the knowledge out there, but relative to any given other person, it's not nearly so disproportionate, right?
Yeah. Yep. And they each have their own circles with imposter syndrome in there. So but yeah, so when it comes to open source specifically, like I mentioned before, you know, this makes it worse because you're working on repositories and projects that have 50, 100, 10, doesn't matter, right? It has other people committing code. You can see their work. Your work is visible. It's open to scrutiny by design. That's open source, right? And so that can just give that anxiety and that feeling of inadequacy as you sit there and go, oh, do I even push the code? Who am I to be doing this? Oh, why did I do this? What did I get myself into? You know, and all that self-doubt comes in. And you know, you don't even think about it like you were saying with the circles, right? The other person on the repository probably feels the same way. And even the creators probably like, oh God, I've got 10 people supporting me on this project now. What are they thinking, right? So we've seen people from all those different sides as everyone's feeling it, and then in the middle, it's only the people who've had this sort of, okay, I'm going to do it. And then they push it and it goes in, and that's what you see as the end result. But sometimes it gets me. I think, I wonder how much out there isn't out there because people just said, nah, I can't do this, right? Or I won't do this. I don't want to put myself in that situation. That's a nice segue into what you're going to say.
That's a nice segue to the implications of imposter syndrome on the Python community, because obviously on the individual level, it's pretty dramatic, right? How people suffer from it in a sense, but also if you look at the Python community overall, this is really a problem, right? Because this can lead to one, reduced contributions, right? So talented developers might hesitate to contribute to projects or engage in community discussions. People, as Julian said, are way capable, right? But this fear holds them back, right? It can lead then to lower diversity, where those that are less confident, that can proportionally include underrepresented groups that might be less likely to participate, leading to less diversity in perspectives, right? You get this elite group that does all the contributions, and many more developers that could help but are not helping because of this problem. And thirdly, stifled innovation, right? With fewer people contributing or people not contributing to their fullest potential, innovation can slow down. So just to bring it in a bit of wider perspective, apart from the individual dramas, this is also a risk for the community at large.
Yeah, at PyCon last year now, there were at least a couple of talks at the Maintainer Summit that were discussing community curation and broadening engagement and trying to strategies for drawing in folks who might be on the fringe and consider wanting to jump in, but being unsure how to, or unsure whether they should or could, or what might happen. So very important.
Yeah. So now that we've sort of talked about the implications, right? Let's talk about what we can do. So Bob and I, with PyBites, we're always talking about taking action. So the first thing, and we love this quote. It's kind of, you got to think about it for a second, but real imposters, so the people who are actually imposters, real imposters don't have imposter syndrome. So if you come across someone, and I'm willing to fall on my sword on this one. If you come across people who say, no, I'm not an imposter, I don't feel it at all ever, then they're the ones who are imposters. They're the ones who are lying, right? Lying to themselves. So having these doubts, I think, is important. Having this doubt shows a level of awareness, right? It shows a desire to do well, right? Because and I want to differentiate that desire to do well from having a lack of ability. So it's not that you can't do it. It's not that you're not skilled enough to contribute or to code. It's that you just really want to do well, right? I was listening to a masterclass from LeVar Burton from Star Trek, and he has this quote that's always stuck with me. He says, "Fear is just excitement waiting to come out." Right? So fear is just you. So let's even this webinar today, being sort of nervous and afraid before presenting shows that I really want to do well, right? So I want to present well and support well. So real imposters are the people who say, nah, don't have it at all. So just remember that by having it, that's actually a good thing. That's a sign of your own awareness. Okay. Next up is that something you can actually do is engage with mentors and peers, right? So don't be afraid to go out and talk with people. So if you are feeling that sense of, let's say with an open source project, should I contribute? Right? Get someone to come and have a look with you, someone who's in the community, someone who's outside, a friend. This is something that we constantly encourage our community to do, is come and talk with us about things that you're doing. If you're nervous, if you're worried, if you just want us to have a quick skim over your code, whatever it happens to be, we can get in there, and those people that you ask can get in there and provide some perspective, some positive reinforcement. And it just gives you that overall feeling that you're not doing this alone, right? Because imposter syndrome can be very isolating, make you feel very lonely and, afraid, right? And that compounds the problem. And the last one I'll give for now is incremental challenges. So break those tasks and those goals down into smaller tasks, first of all. And then as you complete them, start to increase that challenge, right? So start small. So if we're, again, linking it back to open source, contribute to a smaller project. There are a million projects out there. It doesn't have to be Flask and Fast API and the biggest of the big projects. Start with something small. Anything that is a repository on GitHub that's opened for people to contribute, that's open source. It doesn't have to be the biggest company and tech stack out there. So start small, build that confidence over time, very slowly. Take your time, there's no rush, and set some realistic goals. Say, all right, if I want to contribute to one of the biggest projects, I'll set that for a year from now. But work backwards and small from there and say, okay, so the first thing I'm going to do in my first month is start small with a small project. And then by 6 months, maybe even kick off my own open source project that other people can contribute to. And then move into, okay, I'm hitting my big goal of contributing to Flask or whatever.
Yeah.
So is this sort of, Bob, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was wondering, so you mentioned kind of the approach you take in your community. Would this be a good time to kind of overview, like what you've just described? I assume this is the kind of advice you give to the folks going through your programs. Would now be a good time to kind of give the general shape of what PyBites offers program-wise?
Yeah, Bob, do you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah. So how we basically implement this, right, in our coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
So we found a couple of things that really worked for us with this. And when you're wanting to improve as a developer, become one, it's very important that you constantly code and have a sort of deliberate practice with this, like learning to play an instrument, right? Because then you fail fast, you get constant feedback, and that's how you improve, right? So we embrace, so there's a lot of tutorial paralysis out there. People study the field a lot, and that's cool, but you really have to build applications. So that's at the core of what we do. We go against tutorial process. We embrace JIT, or just-in-time learning, and we build complete MVPs, or products or projects of the client's choice, right? So we're not a bootcamp, and we don't dictate what you should build. So fairly complex, challenging projects, leading to a lot of deliberate practice, leading to a lot of code reviewing, constructive code feedback. We encourage our clients to go out there, start writing a blog, share their work, contribute to open source. So there's a lot of implementation and pushing people outside of their comfort zones, at least to a reasonable,
Yeah.
Responsible level, so to say.
Yeah.
Then we do also the mindset coaching. Like people come for the Python and they stay for the mindset, because once they implement these complex problems, it gets hard, right? They have to learn that the obstacles are the way, that you don't have to be too hard on yourself. You shouldn't compare yourself to others because they look up to the coach, right? And you'll get there, right? Step by step. We teach them how to celebrate their wins. We teach them awareness of that imposter syndrome will stay. It won't go away, right? Because ironically, the higher up you go, new levels, new devils, right? That's why, as we said at the start, like these biggest names still have imposter syndrome because they hit new levels, which, presented new challenges. So that's, Julian, does that do the programs justice, more or less?
Yeah, so the only thing I'll add to that, and thanks for that, Bob, is that all of this is wrapped up, just to give you the framework, all of this is wrapped up in a 12-week coaching program. We have a couple of coaching programs now for people who are absolutely brand new. So what we're trying to do is show people in non-tech roles that they can actually develop, that they can code, they can learn Python, they're capable. So we've got people from recruiters, marketers, salespeople, executive assistants, you name it, learning to code with us through this program. And the second program is the one that Bob's talked a little more detail about, which is the PyBites Developer Mindset Program, which is we take people who know some Python and coach them for 12 weeks, helping them push through that imposter syndrome to build those applications. And then they get the desired outcome, whatever the goal was they set at the start. So it is very bespoke. It's unique to each person what their goals are. Some people want the job. Some people want a promotion. Some people want to build an open source project. Some people want to build their own SaaS application to kick off their own business. It changes from person to person, but that's why it is a very unique and custom program with a loose framework around it of how we guide people. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the programs we offer, Brian.
How would you compare maybe the intensity or the extent of imposter syndrome versus maybe the character of it for the two programs? So that executive assistant coming in with no programming background whatsoever. I can imagine that there'd be a type of imposter syndrome that's more, well, I'm not a developer, I've never done this before, versus someone who has some developer skills and then is trying to grow. Are they fairly similar flavors? Are they different? Do you handle them similarly differently? Talk a bit about that.
I got ideas, Julian, but you go
go
first.
Okay, I'll go first. That's a really great question, Brian, because for me, I noticed less from the people who are coming in as non-tech people, because they showed a desire to learn this stuff. They said, I want to improve my job. I want to automate pieces of my job. So it hasn't so much been a matter of I can't do this. It's they know they don't even know anything about it. So they tackle it as something new, right? They come in with that mindset of I have to learn this, and then they find the difficulties, but they don't ever sit there and say, I can't do this, right? They come, I mean, sometimes they'll have their moments of doubt, but it's definitely you see more of that. I'm coming in here to learn something new. Now, the people who already know stuff, because they already know things, coming into the main program, the more difficult program or challenging program, I should say, because they already know stuff, they also know what they don't know sometimes, right? They've seen the behemoth scene of Python, and they see all the things that they don't know that they could know, that they find I would never know that stuff. And so the imposter syndrome is because they're already aware. So the people who come in as beginners, they'll probably feel that once they learn enough Python to know what exists.
Yeah.
But if they don't know it's even there at all, or like how big the rabbit hole actually is once they start learning it,
Right.
I've seen less of it. Was that in line with what you were going to say,
Exactly. I
Bob?
was going to say exactly the same. Like you come in fresh, no stakes almost, right? Nothing to lose. They have not been exposed to many things. But then you get an intermediate person, and yeah, they literally talk to us about unknown unknowns, right? And it's like the more you pick up in this field, the more you see, like the more you know, the more you don't know, which I think Socrates or some philosopher said, but it's definitely
Yeah.
true for developers as well. Like, oh, now I'm in Fast API. Oh, now I also need to know Pydantic. Oh, now I need to know about databases. Now I need, oh, GitLab. Oh, GitLab CI/CD, CI/CD as well. So like
Yeah.
every day, the stack of technology grows, and that's hard for people. Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Because the fractal, because I have my own open source projects, many of which need more attention than I've been able to give to them. But I wonder if there's an analogy. The more open source code I write, the more things I think of that I could write. It's like this fractal growth of, oh, well, I could plug this gap and I could build this. It's almost like that knowledge of what's out. It's not the same thing, but like the scope of it is the same, where it's like the more you build, the more you learn, the more there is, and the bigger the field is to try to grapple with.
But that's
Yeah.
also the exciting part, right?
Oh,
Like this
sure.
is both a risk, but also a huge reward of being a developer. That there's always more to learn. So it's insatiable, right?
Yeah. So talk a bit about you have someone in the program, they're experiencing whatever flavor of imposter syndrome they're experiencing. Talk about what you see in their experience of fighting through it, of those moments of clarity where they realize, no, I actually, where it drives home, I did that. No, I did know what I was doing there. Talk about their experience and then what it's like for you helping them navigate that.
Yeah.
Bob,
So
you
there's a
take this one.
technical and a mindset component to it. So I can do the technical part,
Okay.
and Julie, you see more on the mindset side of this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So Julian is more the mindset side, right? And I do more like the technical coaching. So I would guide the project with them and challenge them to implement features and give them just enough guidance to learn it themselves, right? Because if you give them the fish, they don't learn out. You don't teach them how to fish. But then yeah, so at the start they don't know, they think they cannot do it, right? They especially again, as we said, these projects we set out are pretty complex. But then you break it down, which is also an important tip for imposter syndrome. Like break it down into smaller, manageable chunks, um, and then they start accomplishing things, of course, with the help of the coach. But obviously, they get a lot of credit because we teach them how to figure out stuff autonomously. And you see those light bulb moments like, oh, hey, all of a sudden I see this MVP coming out of the ground and it's doing certain things. It's generating PDFs or whatever the domain logic requirement is. And then through that building, I was reading the testimonials again, and we constantly see when they build and ship code, their confidence goes up, which equals better managing imposter syndrome. Right? They still get it, of course. But there's definitely that relation, right? Confidence goes up, better handling imposter syndrome. So I see it very tangibly in when they ship code and build complex projects, they get light bulb moments, they get that aha moments, confidence goes up, and yeah, that's of course very rewarding, even more rewarding than doing it yourself, right? Seeing that in your people.
Yep.
Did I
And
steal
so,
your mindset side?
no. I can always talk about this stuff.
Yeah, till the cows come home.
So, with the mindset, when I meet with our clients, the people coming through, um, there's always this consistent feeling of will I act? So we reflect back on their goals, we see how they're going towards that, what's changed from when you started to where you are now a couple of weeks into the program. And there's always that feeling of I'll never get there. Like this is bigger than I thought it would be. This mountain is huge. And so, but to the question that you had, Brian, through what Bob's talking about with just breaking it down to the small chunks and just being consistent, just pushing every day, Monday to Friday, coding. By my next check-in, they're like, I've learned more in a few weeks than I've learned in 3 years, and that feeling of excitement that they have for pushing through it, and they still have it, but that's for the next stage of their application, their project. But to have gotten this out, or what they've done so far, they're like, this is mind-blowing, this is incredible. And it's purely through pushing through. So we get, as coaches, and our team as well, we have this incredible sense of pride that comes with that, because when you see someone push through because you've coached them, you've helped them, and they've taken the advice and just done the hard work, because we don't write their code for them, but they've pushed through, they've broken through that barrier, had that aha moment where they've just figured it out and just makes sense. Yeah, we feel incredibly proud. And do you mind if I give you an example?
Please.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this. I won't use her name, but we have an individual that actually just completed the program. I think this week, if not last week, maybe. But she came in and she wasn't even a professional developer, right? She dabbled here and there, but she was an engineer of a different kind. And so the imposter syndrome she felt throughout the program was very much like, I want this career as a developer. How am I going to get there? I mean, she has the determination and the grit. She was coding like a machine. It was incredible to watch. But there was still that fear of like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't want to apply for a job. I just, I'm kind of scared, and um, I'll wait till later to do it and kick the can down the road. But fast forward to the end of the program, and she wrote an article on the technology stack that she's using. I'll just say it's Prefect, right, Bob?
Yeah.
So,
And AWS and
um,
Pulumi and the whole stack.
yeah, so she wrote about how she used that along with all the other technologies in her application, in her project. And it's a fantastic article. We loved it. We read through it. It's amazing. And then it got picked up by the actual Prefect team, and they loved it. They thought it was so good. They wanted to host it on their website and
Wow.
share it out with their audience. And so here, within a 12-week period, she's gone from never having coded professionally or a project before to coding something that was so beautifully done, um, all by herself, right? I mean, she has a coach to help, but the coach doesn't write her code, like I said. And at the end of after pushing through, she then pushed through that next layer of imposter syndrome to write something and put it out there. And then, of all people to see it and pick it up, it was the creators of the one of the technologies that she uses in her stack, and they loved it so much they put it on her website. And it's just, that's the
That's
stuff
terrific.
that
Yeah,
keeps us going with this stuff. So very, very cool things that come out of pushing through imposter syndrome. All right,
absolutely.
Bob, we got some more tips.
Some more
Can I
tips?
drop one quick question in before we move to those?
Of
So you
course.
mentioned the JIT learning style, just-in-time learning.
Oh, yeah.
I have had I don't think I've gone through a single tutorial video even. It's like, oh, I'm trying to do this. How do I do that? Oh, here's the tool. Here's the docs, or here's example code. Thank goodness for the internet, and you can do just-in-time learning. It's generally there.
Mm.
Um, and ultimately, there are different learning styles, learning approaches, but clearly part of what you do is help teaching these folks how to learn. And it seems to me that knowledge is a key piece of fighting imposter syndrome, because it's like then it can kind of turn it into, well, that's true, I don't know this yet, but I know how I can know it and then move forward. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, actually really glad you brought that up because a lot of what we do is actually the meta skills, right? Like, yeah, of course we teach the Python developer skills and all that, but when it really comes down to is becoming resourceful, learning
Hmm.
how to learn in the context of a developer, being resourceful, I usually call it, knowing how to navigate Stack Overflow, use ChatGPT, debug, right? Like, yeah, put a breakpoint in there and stuff like that. And yeah, those are usually the most valuable skills to make you an effective developer. And also that mindset, right? Of yeah, because a lot of tutorial paralysis, the problem with that is that people want to consume complete resources as a way of procrastination. Like, I'm not ready to write the code. I need to study it A to Z. And we break through that, right? You're ready now. When you join on the program, you code day one, and you try to figure out where to get the answers. And I think that mindset shift of being okay with writing code that you will throw away, you will iterate, you will refactor, and admitting that, yeah, there are going to be failures and iterations, and that's fine. And I think it's super valuable as well for any company. If you're dare to admit that you're not knowing something, and then say, but I know how to figure it out, because then you're honest that you don't know something, which is a great antidote to imposter syndrome, right? And then, but I know to figure it out, right? And then I think that earns a lot of respect as well.
Great. Okay,
Nice.
so you have more tips, unless Julian, you had something else, but either way's good.
Yeah, I'm good. You go for it,
Julian,
Bob.
I think I spoiled all the tips, didn't I?
All right.
Shall I
I have
call out
more.
the success thing?
Yeah, go on to the wins.
Yeah, because one of the things I mentioned in the more tips section was track your weekly progress and successes. And we had a dedicated note on that because, yeah, as Julian said, the imposter syndrome and this whole endeavor can be quite lonely. And so we highly encourage people to, seek out communities as PyBites and stuff, because you get a lot of support, right? But what Julian and myself are doing like for 3 years now, or no, I think more, is keeping a wins file, aka success wall or brag doc, however you want to call it. And we have a Monday reminder to go in there to update it. We have personal wins and we have PyBites wins, right? And honestly, I haven't read back in a while, but when things are getting tough, and they will, and there will be obstacles, and you'll be wondering why I'm doing this, who am I, and all that self-talk. Going back to a reference like that is enormously valuable. So first of all, you have an accountability partner, right? So Julie, in this case, doing this together has been, I don't think we would be talking here today if we weren't doing this together. Having this reference or wins doc, confidence booster, because you easily forget about your successes and then you go into that negative self-talk again, right? So you need to keep track of that. And yeah, as I said, when times are getting tough, it's a motivator if you start reading the back, because this also goes back to, one of the things that also triggers imposter syndrome big time is comparing yourself to others, right? Because we'll never code like this person, or this is so slick, etc. But you should really compare yourself to yesterday's self, right? So having this brag wall, and if we would read back now for 2019 wins and the wins we're having these days, like, wow, we've actually come a long way, right? So it also goes back to trying to compare yourself to your former self. So yeah, the wins doc process has been very helpful for us in dealing with this.
I feel like there's a clever changelog name you could come up with for that, like achievements changelog or something. But I can't think of a good smooth name for it at the moment.
It's a good one. We use GPT to come up with something.
Yeah, there you go.
But the thing I want to add to this, and this ties into what I'm going to talk next about confidence, is that what Bob and I have started doing, I mean, not just now, but maybe a year or so ago, is we also write down our challenges in there. So the things that didn't go well, the things that we struggled with. So, I mean, for us, we're human too, right? And so if we get feedback that's overly critical or something that we felt that just got to us for whatever reason, it might be the tiniest thing, right? Or it could be something big. But when things don't go to plan as well, or we're feeling stressed or worried about it, we also put that in the wins doc, because we consider it a win that we got through it, right?
Hmm.
And what's nice is when you do reflect back to 2 years ago and you see those growth points of like, oh, this is, you read it and you think, this is what I was worrying about 2 years ago. Wow. And then you think, wow, by pushing through that, here is where I am now. And that's not something I care about in the least. That's not something that bothers me in the least when it happens now, because you've built that sort of that resilience around it
Resilience.
all. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that ties nicely into this one. If when you push through the imposter syndrome, when you take these techniques of chunking it down to small things and accountability and all the things we mentioned, um, yeah, quite plain and simple, you have increased confidence, right? So it can lead to a more confident approach to problem solving and learning, with the just-in-time learning model that Bob was talking about. As you use it more, you build more confidence in how it works and how you use it, and that it can get you that success. So similarly, as you're pushing code to open source, if you push through that imposter syndrome and even push just once and realize, oh, the world didn't end, or oh, the maintainer, their feedback was actually human and really nice, right? And that's a lesson to all open source contributors and maintainers. Make sure you're human in your responses. You are dealing with people, not with
Yeah.
machines.
Especially over text. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm incredibly nice to Chat GPT and everything else as well, because you never know. You've seen those memes out
You
there.
don't want it to be especially malicious as it hallucinates
Yeah,
back at you. So be polite, right?
exactly. And in 20 years, the Terminator style stuff happening. So he was always nice to me. Um, so you build your confidence, and that actually leads to bigger problems, and then having this issue again, and so on. But it also leads to higher quality contributions. So the more you're willing to do this, the more you're willing to push through, the more you're open to feedback and moving on with this and taking on bigger challenges, the better you get, and the better the quality of your contributions that you make, right? And lastly, it leads to better collaboration, so enhanced collaboration. As you learn to push through this and get involved and commit code and review your code and review other people's code and give them meaningful feedback, um, you learn to work better with the people around you and the people that you're working on these projects with. You build a community, you support others in the community grows, becomes more inclusive, becomes more supportive, because you're getting in there, you're sharing what you've built and what you've learned with other people, and that encourages them to do the same. So it has this exponential effect, and you may not even see it, right? But those little touch points, because you pushed through and done it, may be that inspiration for someone that also needed that little push. So yeah, so that's those are three of the things that come from pushing through this. That's good. Bob, where are you at with this?
I'm looking through, and what's coming up we kind of touched upon, so maybe we can do some more questions and answers.
Okay. So one of the things that comes to mind, and it may be something that the two of you haven't dealt too directly with, given that you're tending to work with folks that are either beginners or somewhat earlier in a developer growth journey. How does imposter syndrome interact with burnout? Do you have you seen people struggling with both at the same time, or because it seems like the emotional drain of being burned out then would make one susceptible to more imposter syndrome, or lose ground even. It's like, well, I was feeling confident about this, but now I don't know if I am anymore. Have you seen that in folks? Have you felt it? What thoughts?
Yep. Bob, do
I
you mind if I
I
take?
definitely think they go hand in hand, but I have
You take it.
a hard time thinking about a burnout example right now. Burnout I associate more with, in the context of open source, with maintainers that have an extremely
Yeah.
successful project and are not handling the load anymore. But I cannot
Well, I
relate. I
mean,
mean, yeah.
I
Do you
don't
have
think you have to.
an
Yeah, I don't think
example?
you have to relate it to open source specifically. I think in general, um, working with imposter syndrome, pushing through, it's a stressful endeavor, right? It is going to require energy. It is going to require you to focus, to be intentional, to work yourself up, G yourself up, and push through and do it, right? It's equivalent of getting up and standing up on a stage and presenting, right? There is a lot of mental load and energy. The sleep the night before, you won't be able to sleep properly. Before you push that code, you're going to be sweating, you're going to be worried, all that stuff. If you're doing that every single day of the week, you will burn the heck out, right? It's you. So they do go hand in hand in that respect. Um, and so the same, and if you flip it the other way, people going through burnout at work, which is huge at the moment, right? So many people in this industry are feeling burnt out, right? Um, you will have less energy to even think about pushing through. As you're low on energy, as you're feeling frustrated, even talking about mental health issues that burnout leads to, right? Um, of course, you're going to have self-doubt. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel like you can't do it. Like I'm feeling so burnt out from just surviving the day job or whatever it is that you're doing. Who am I to even push even further and learn something new? So forget even contributing to open source. Talk about, well, to do that, most people want to learn learn a new stack or learn something new or develop better skills to be able to do that. You won't even attempt those because you're so burnt out from everything else that you're doing. So they totally go hand in hand. And we
Yeah,
see that.
because
Yeah.
if you talk about burnout, you talk about somebody that's in survival mode, right? And then it just becomes very tough because to deal with imposter syndrome, you have to have, yeah, it's a lot to cope with, right? And but yeah, we definitely personally we strive for balance, so we work very hard during the week and try to take off weekends, and I think that has prevented us from burnout so far, and has made us more resilient to deal with these kind of stressors during the week. So yeah, they go hand in hand.
The
Yeah.
small business life is, you know, on various edges,
Yeah,
much of
because
the time.
imposter syndrome is not only developer related, it's also entrepreneur related, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah. That'd be a great thing to talk about. What imposter syndrome have the two of you felt over the course of growing PyBites?
oh, there are many more areas to suck in. Marketing,
Yeah.
sales, all these finances,
Like,
whatever we had to pick up, right?
Mhm.
well, perfect example. Who are we to be standing here talking to you about this right now, right? So
Who am I to be
that's,
sitting here hosting this?
yeah,
Mm, mm.
exactly. And it happens all the time running PyBites. I mean, the amount of times we'll have engagements with people that um, we look up to, right? When Bob and I were learning Python back in the day, we learned it together. That's how PyBites came into existence, right? As a blog. And even just the first blog post, who are we to be putting stuff on the internet about this that people could find? Ha! Those peasants, you know. And then you also have the eventuality that we started engaging with people that we really looked up to and idolized, and still look up to and appreciate. Like perfect example, Michael Kennedy from the Talk Python podcast. I remember our first goal when we started, if we started setting goals, was oh, imagine just a year or two from now, or 10 years from now, we're on the Talk Python podcast and doing that. And because we love his podcast and we used to listen to
Likewise,
it a
yeah.
lot. And then I think it was 10 months later, we calculated that recently. I think it was 10 months later we were on his podcast and we were like, so there's that imposter syndrome. Who are we to be here? What are we doing? What
Did
did
he
we
reach?
do
Did
that
he
was
reach
burning
out
out?
to you? How
Yeah.
did that? Oh, nice.
So someone in the community that we didn't even have a proper community at that point, but someone who was participating in the challenges and things we were doing actually emailed Mike and said, "Hey, these guys are doing cool stuff with code challenges. You should get them on the podcast." So he reached out and yeah, and my pseudonym when I reached out to Mike and said you should talk to my alias was Nick. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't me. I didn't do it, Bob. It was someone. It was actually someone else who recommended. But so it was we have that from the start, but then as the business has grown and PyBites has grown, for you know, To be completely honest and blunt as we always are, our values are to be transparent and honest at all times. The second you start charging money for anything, there's a huge imposter syndrome piece there. Like, people are going to pay me for this. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
So yeah, we get it through everything. The second we sit down to work on PyBites, you have that devil on your shoulder instantly saying, "You're a fool."
What do you think you are doing? Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
that's
big
why I've
time
surrounded
at every
myself with
stage.
my heroes. Look, Iron Man, Link, Batman. Anyway, sorry, Bob, I cut you off.
Yeah. No. That's yeah, exactly at every level. As I said, right, new levels, new devils, and that's constantly when we are growing and doing new things. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So look, I know we've only got a few minutes left, but what I wanted to share with everyone while we just wrap up a little bit was this slide here with different ways to engage with Bob and myself. So let me share this quickly. Let's go there and share. Can you guys see that?
Yep, you're good.
Yes.
All right, cool. So look, where to go from here? So first and foremost, forget the links for a second. I think the first thing to do right now is just figure out something that is proving a challenge for you. Hopefully, let's link it to open source. But like we said, start small. Could be just coding something locally, right? But do something that's going to get that wind in your sails of pushing through imposter syndrome. So if there's something that you're having self-doubt about, take an action to push through it, and then use that momentum of that success to push through on the next thing. And then don't let that momentum stop. This is the perfect time, as we talked on our podcast last night. This is the perfect time of year. The start of the year is a nice trigger mentally to get through and start anew, right? Because it's a brand new year, new month, everything. So that's my urgency and my ask of all of you listening, watching this recording, whatever. Take that step. Just take that first step and use that, and don't let that momentum fade, right? So what you're seeing on the screen here, the first set of links, they're to our coaching program. So beginner, the PDI program, which I talked about for generally the non-tech people trying to learn Python from scratch. That's the first link. The second one is to our mainstream coaching program that we've had the majority of people go through. That's the PDM program. And then you can come and have a chat with us. So take that one sub link, and you can actually have a conversation with Bob and myself, or depending on your time zone. If I'm asleep, it'll be Bob, and if he's asleep, it'll be me. And then number two, we have the mindset related content. So our podcast, even though it's technically a PyBites Python podcast, what we've just organically moved into is talking a lot about mindset in the coding scene, career skills. We do have technical guests. We have some amazing guests coming up over the next couple of weeks. We had amazing guests through December, and we're definitely getting that technical hit. But we have a boatload of stuff in there with people from around the industry as well, talking about things like imposter syndrome, but also different career tips. Like one we just had recently was around job hunting and being on that job hunt throughout this year, right? So how to organize your career change and be methodical about that. Then we have our newsletter. So if you head to that link, you can sign up to hear from us once a week. We do 5 bullet style emails every Monday or Tuesday, depending on whether we get that written in time. There's that imposter syndrome. God, can I do it this week? So we have that sort of thing, which is filled with tips. People love that sort of style. We've iterated through many types of newsletter styles over the past couple of years, and that's what we've landed on. And then there's our LinkedIn. So come and chat with us on LinkedIn, see what we're up to, what we're sharing, and we'd love to actually just have a conversation with you. We find that's the best way to get some clarity on where you are, the things that you're concerned about, the things that you want to learn, how we can help you or your team or your peers, whatever, with Python and pushing through to that next level, reaching your goals with promotion, with landing the job in the first place, with pushing to open source, creating your own open source project from scratch. So those are the things that we we support people with. So you can come chat with us there.
Perfect.
Terrific.
Nice. Anything from you, Bob?
No, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having us. Are there any questions?
Nothing specific in from the audience, and that pretty much covered everything I had. I guess the one last closeout question I had was you had the coaching, which has kind of moved into the mindset, thought process and consideration. Do you have any inklings on kind of what the next? Do you have a next big kind of topic area that you seem to be starting to think about that might be in the future, or do you still just centered on the mindset and focused on that for now?
We do. So we had PDM first. That's the flagship coaching, right? Again, intermediate to advanced. Then we bridged the beginner gap. So we made PDI. That was only last year, right? So that's a program that's
Okay.
in the run for a year. Bridges from complete newbie, novice to intermediate or ready for PDM. So we bridged that gap. And now we found another potential gap at the other end. Like you come out of PDM and now you want to specialize. So this year we want to work on specialization tracks: entrepreneur, web developer, DevOps, AI, machine learning. So yeah, it's still early, but the team is super excited,
Yeah.
and it's a logical next step for people to really focus down after PDM on something, a specific field.
The same kind of model where it's a mentoring based tracks for each of those.
Coaching, project, and collaboration community around it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Definitely sounds like a good plan. Cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And Brian, just the last thing I want to add in there as well. And this adds to that accountability piece and the surrounding yourself with people piece for imposter syndrome. It'd be remiss of me to say that it's just Bob and I, right? But over the past couple of years, organically, we've built this incredible team. I think we're up to 13 people on the team, including Bob and I.
Nice.
And they're just the most. It all happened organically, right? It's not like we put job ads out there and stuff. We just attracted these people and we worked with them, and then they just organically started working with us. And we definitely couldn't do this without them. So, when you look at when people watching this, when you look at the people who are at the top of their game in whatever you look up to, and whoever you look up to, just remember they're probably surrounded by many people who have lifted them up, given them that motivation and helped them. So you can do that too, because certainly our team keeps us going. They constantly give us that kind word and push us through. So it's special thanks to them as well for helping us achieve what we have today.
Big shout out. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning they're doing amazing things. Yeah.
Very important. One last comment from the audience, and then we'll close out. Thank you all. I believe the most important part of combating imposter syndrome is hearing that others are also fighting it.
Yeah.
It certainly rings true to me. So
yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Nice way to close that one off. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
All right, that'll be it for today's event. Bob, Julian, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being here. Glad there was a time we could make work. Thank you to everyone who attended for the questions. As I said at the top, the event has been recorded. Now that we're almost done, and I will get that produced and up as soon as I can. So subscribe to our Open Teams YouTube channel, drop that in the chat to be notified when that goes live. Please check out openteams.com to learn more about Open Teams and our offerings, and we will see you at our next event. Thank you very much.